As I mentioned before, I've written about the show Intervention, an article I co-authored with a professor in the School of Social Work. I'm particularly interested in these shows and the stories they tell about family and the nature of addiction. The article that Hargraves writes is more concerned with addictive spectatorship. And I think that his argument about actual addiction that's featured on shows like this, and then the addictive qualities of reality TV is a unique argument. Um, these kinds of shows, I think, provide a unique example of the the way in which we recognize what we see on reality television as familiar, and yet it is different enough that we have distance between ourselves and what we watch. We're often urged to watch shows like these and others and to judge, and part of that judgment makes us feel better about ourselves. What we're watching is coded as bad or other, and it doesn't just have to be these recovery TV shows. Any kind of show, Cops, the weight loss challenge shows, and even some of the other shows that are mentioned in the article that we'll discuss here in a second, I wouldn't have put in the same category as intervention, but yet they have a similar coding of what you're watching as inappropriate or bad. Um, what we can do is we can take pleasure from watching these shows, but sort of distance ourselves even from the pleasure by saying, consciously or unconsciously, that we're watching this ironically, right? We're not watching it to celebrate these behaviors, so that our pleasure from watching it isn't really a celebration of things that are framed as inappropriate or dangerous or illegal. We're sort of designed to be watching it with a grain of salt, if you will. The folks that are on these shows are often stigmatized, whether they are addicts or people that hoard grocery supplies or cut out lots of coupons. They are stigmatized in real ways, and they are positioned very much as other to the society at large, and largely to the viewer at home. Reality TV in general provides us a motive to disidentify with those we're watching. The more connected we would feel with the kinds of folks that are featured on these shows, the more problematic the narrative would become. But because we don't fully identify, other than recognizing the people as familiar and maybe some of their behaviors as familiar, because we can have that distance, it makes these shows easier to consume psychologically. So Hargraves is talking about addictive spectatorship. In terms of addictive spectatorship, addiction on TV, Hargraves puts in the subcategory of recovery television. Recovery television consists of spectacular behavior, compulsive behavior, addicted individuals who have to be diagnosed by experts and corrected through some sort of intervention. Now, that argument holds up for most of the shows that are raised in this article, though I would argue that some are exceptions, and there isn't quite that intervention component, that the folks being featured that have these sort of spectacular behaviors are not corrected, they're not intervened on, they're just sort of documented. For Hargraves, the addicted spectator, so the person watching, is a counterpoint to the sort of neoliberal ideal. So if the individual is being celebrated for control and ability to drive the narrative of reality shows, and there's a sort of neoliberal component to watching, the addicted spectator is not necessarily empowered in the same way that the neoliberal model would suggest. The TV junkie, as Hargraves refers to the spectator, can get a kind of high from watching all of these shows again and again, whether they're duplicated or unique. that there's a certain pleasure that comes from watching that sort of borders a high, especially when people are consuming countless episodes of any given show. The clip that you're going to see next really should give you a sense of what takes place, particularly on the show Intervention. We'll see some clips of other shows, but this should give you a general sense of that show.